The NFL preseason is officially wrapped up. We're in the home stretch now, heading toward week one. I know a lot of you still have fantasy drafts to go here before the regular season, of course. And even for those of you who have wrapped up your 2025 drafts, we'll have some adjustments to make. And luckily, we got a decent amount of info during this year's preseason period. I'm John Macri, and for this YouTube exclusive version of the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition, I'll be running through which IDPs have their stocks on the rise and which ones we saw their IDP stock decrease this preseason, all in one nice preseason recap. So let's get it. All right, over the last couple of weeks, we focused on like the top 10 IDP takeaways from preseason week 1 and preseason week 2. But kind of as expected, preseason week 3 didn't give us a ton of new info to make kind of one video specifically on just this past weekend. So instead, what I'll kind of do is provide a recap of the entire preseason news and information that we've gotten, including plenty of stuff and positions that we haven't already talked about in the previous recap, so that we're kind of in as good of a spot as we can be information-wise heading into week 1. So we've also spent a lot of time on linebackers recently. Shout out to all of you who tuned into the Green Dot linebacker video with Mike Woolard and I. That one blew up quicker than expected. I knew you guys would be excited about linebackers, but man, appreciate you all for showing so much love there. I'm very much appreciative of that, and definitely motivates me to make sure you guys get the most bang for your time here. And that's why I'll be going into detail on the other IDP positions like safety and defensive line, so that we can get you all as ready as possible for the 2025 season. So I do want to get the linebackers really quickly out of the way first, really quickly, since, again, we spent like 2 hours covering them last week, and they've been highlighted on these previous recap episodes as well. So just a quick general look at the landscape changes here for the position at linebacker specifically. We did get some new Green Dot and every down linebackers this year, right? Maybe newer than expected coming out of even the NFL draft, right? Starting with Cleveland's Carson Schwessinger. I have him as LB16 right now. He's flown up the leaderboard as far as, you know, the biggest risers in the preseason. Jordan Hicks retired. JOK isn't healthy. Carson Schwessinger getting the Green Dot, playing a full-time role is massive, and I think he could be very productive in that spot. We also saw Jack Sanborn named as the Green Dot in Dallas. It looks like he's going to be a full-time starter there. Kenneth Murray, probably the LB2. Christian Roseboom took the Green Dot in Carolina. Josie Jewell was released because of injury, so Christian Roseboom comes in, and now he's a full-time starter there. Nate Landman in Los Angeles, the Rams, he is going to be the starter and Green Dot, it looks like, most likely for them, with I think Omar Spates playing the second spot, probably more in a part-time role. Mac Wilson, another surprise one in Arizona. So he's going to be the Green Dot. Kaiser White is gone. Akeem Davis-Gaither was brought in, but he's not going to be a full-time guy. So Mac Wilson is going to be the Green Dot for the first time in his NFL career. And then Devin White, also in Las Vegas. Look, we've seen IDP relevant Devin White before. We've also seen very inefficient and ineffective Devin White before. So he comes in the lowest in the ranks of these new Green Dot every down guys, just because I trust him the least to hold that role or to be effective enough, but still very much worth the shot here. He's going to be a full-time guy in Las Vegas, it looks like, as long as he's on the roster, or at least to start the year. Then we got some new LB2 starting options on different teams. Jihad Campbell being one of the first ones in Philadelphia. We don't know what Nakobe Dean, his health situation is exactly. We don't know when he's expected back. So right now it looks like Jihad Campbell going to play the bulk of the snaps as the LB2 next to Zach Bond. Demetrius Knight Jr. In Cincinnati. So another, rookie here, but one that is in a good spot to be a potential full-time starter. Jermaine Pratt obviously released, and they spent a second-round pick on Demetrius Knight, and he's automatically moved up the depth chart there, and he has been starting next to Logan Wilson in the preseason. So enough to be excited about there. D. Winters, with the San Francisco 49ers. He looks like the clear favorite to be the LB2 next to Fred Warner. Should be a full-time role or very close to it. So like D Winters quite a bit. I'll probably move him up the ranks. We'll get the rankings updated at the end of this week. But D Winters definitely somebody that we should have our eye on. Cedric Gray in Tennessee, he looks to be the LB2 there next to Cody Barton. It was James Williams in the first preseason game, but over the last 2 weeks, Cedric Gray has kind of been the clear starter over James Williams. So Cedric Gray is a name for Tennessee that we need to keep an eye on. Might not be a full-time role, but again, deeper leagues, deeper in drafts, we can take a shot on Cedric Gray. Christian Ellis in New England, another guy probably not going to be a full-time starter, but he is kind of the clear favorite right now in New England to play as a technical starter next to Robert Spillane. So like Christian Ellis for those deeper leagues as well. Same thing with Divine Diablo in Atlanta. He looks like a starter there. It might be a full-time role. I might move him up quite a bit as well with new defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich coming in. He ran a lot of 2 linebacker looks. So I think there could be a lot more room here for Divine Diablo to move up the ranks a little bit. And yeah, Troy Anderson just can't seem to stay healthy. So that looks to be the case for Atlanta. And then in Indianapolis, a little weird here. Jalen Carles has just not been healthy. He was the clear favorite to start next to Zaire Franklin this year. He just hasn't been able to get on the field. So as long as that's the case, Joe Bacci, who Lou Anarumo has familiarity with during his time in Cincinnati, Bacci has been getting the starter treatment and will likely be the starter to start the year, as Carles isn't probably expected back week 1. We'll see how quickly he gets back. Like there's a chance that he could land on IR as well, like a short term or whatever. But I would definitely be looking to add Joe Bacci because there could be a nice volume heavy role there in Indianapolis. Now, some of the fallers, probably the biggest one for me is Bobby Okereke of the New York Giants. We talked a little bit about this in the Green Dot episode, and we talked about it in the preseason week 2 recap. Shenanigans going on in New York's defense with Bobby Okereke. Started the first drive of preseason week 2 with the dot. Second drive, the dot went to Micah McFadden. Okereke came off on 3rd and long. Third drive, Mawasow and McFadden played. Fourth drive, Okereke and Mawasow played, and Mawasow was the dot. So look, we kind of, thought maybe that Brian Daboll explained it away coming out of that second preseason game about just wanting to get Bobby Okereke his allotted snaps. I believe that less, to be honest. I think there's been some reporting as well coming out of the Giants camp that Okereke might not be a 100% snap player this year. This is something we saw with Foye Oluokun last year, right? Where he was getting kind of rotated. It's obviously a different defense and everything, but it wouldn't be uncommon to see these guys who were once full-time players kind of get rotated and use it in situation specific roles, because obviously the NFL has started to adapt as far as linebacker usage goes. There's guys that are good in coverage. There's guys that are good on rundowns. There's guys that they want to see get more work. So Bobby Okereke could be somebody that I think is going to continue to fall here in the rankings. He's not somebody I'm going to be comfortable with starting week 1 until we know exactly what the usage is. Devin Lloyd, another one in a very similar situation. I think he's, again, first round draft capital to his name, but this new coaching staff has come in. They're showing a rotation there at that LB2 spot. It hasn't been a full-time role as well. So I think he could be sharing time and also not playing full-time when he is on for his drive. So Devin Lloyd, I think I'm going to drop even further in the rankings. Jermaine Pratt in Las Vegas, he's fallen quite a bit for me, not only playing LB2 to Devin White, which isn't a full-time role, but he's also playing a ton on the edge. What we saw in the second preseason game, that worries me a lot as far as what his tackle efficiency could be. So he's somebody that I want no part of right now in drafts. Akeem Davis-Gaither, very similar, playing a part-time role there in Arizona, not likely to be a full-time workload for him. So he's fallen in the ranks. Junior Colson, I don't know, man. We've talked about him. I'm really worried about him. I would not be drafting him right now. I think we could see a gross rotation at the Chargers LB2 spot. And then obviously we just talked about Jalen Carles. So he's fallen quite a bit here as he just can't stay healthy. Now we got some risers as far as starting safeties go. So these are guys that look to have solidified their spots as the starters come week 1 here for their teams that maybe weren't necessarily in those roles last year, right? So Cole Cole Bishop, sorry, the big one in Buffalo. This is one that we've kind of been waiting on a little bit. It's only like what, year two, but we were waiting a lot in year one because there were some mid starters there in Buffalo. Now we haven't seen Taylor Rapp in the preseason, but that matters less. There is two safety spots there. So Cole Bishop has been starting over DeMar Hamlin, which we like to see. For his IDP potential, we can take some shots on Cole Bishop in our IDP drafts, and dynasty leagues obviously can start feeling more comfortable about potentially starting him this year. In Cleveland, Ronnie Hickman is likely the starter next to Grant Delpit. Rayshon Jenkins, they brought him in. Jenkins obviously has been a starter in the NFL in the past. He's also been a relevant IDP for us, but it looks like Ronnie Hickman has taken over that starting role. And in Jacksonville, it's really gross there. It's Andrew Dewey Wingard and Eric Murray, who are the likely starters over Darnell Savage and Antonio Johnson. So again, new defensive coordinator coming in, shaking things up, and he has picked two new starters this year compared to those guys from last year. In Kansas City, we talked about this one in the preseason week 2 recap. Or week 1, I can't remember, but Jamari Connor, it looks like the safer bet here at safety as a full-time player over Jaden Hicks. Now, Jaden Hicks is playing, but he's only getting out there in situational usage. He's not playing a full-time role. It's only certain packages where he is coming off the field. So Jamari Connor and Brian Cook as the deep safety, those guys are not coming off the field. So when it comes to safeties and DBs at such a deep position, if you're losing snaps, you become basically unstartable for IDP. So we want the guys that are going to be playing full-time snaps. And that right now is Jamari Connor. In Miami, Ifatu Melifonwu looks like the starter. I mean, we haven't seen Ashton Davis. He's been hurt, but Ifatu Melifonwu did start the third preseason game with Minkah Fitzpatrick, played a full-time role there, and he looks like it'll be him and Minkah to start the season for Miami. In San Francisco, Richie Grant has been banged up. Malik Mustafa is also injured. So Jason Pinnock looks like the starter next to Jair Brown there at safety. We've got some IDP usage out of Jason Pinnock in the past. Looks like he'll get another shot for the 49ers this year. And then Tyke Smith in Tampa Bay. We talked about this one. Really good box usage. He's going to start next to Antoine Winfield Jr., it looks like, as the other starting safety. Really like the potential for IDP for Tyke Smith. Christian Izien, he was playing behind Tyke Smith. There was times when they were on the field at the same time, but he also stayed in the game later in preseason week 2 when we saw Tyke Smith. So that's kind of our sign of where those guys stand on the depth chart. As far as fallers at the safety position, I mean, the safeties, we could move on from them pretty easily, but I think the biggest one that we've talked about was Kyle Duggar. We tweeted about it. We mentioned it in the preseason recap episodes. There's been trade rumors now for Kyle Duggar. He's also a cut candidate if that doesn't happen. So it looks like Jalen Hawkins is the top option based on the preseason usage. Jalen Hawkins also didn't play in the third preseason game, taking that game off with the rest of the projected starters. Craig Woodson, who is a rookie, also an option, but have to imagine that Vrabel goes veteran first there. So really, it probably points to Jabril Peppers as the safest bet for these safeties. And then I'd go Hawkins after that. But Duggar's time in New England looks to be done. We'll see if, a safety needy team makes a move for him, but we're resetting expectations for him and his IDP potential. Kyle Duggar right now undraftable, not expecting to get him playing a starting role in New England. So speaking of highly regarded players with tempered expectations, I think we'll focus on some rookies here. And these are highly drafted rookies, I would say, that I'm kind of just being cautious with right now. Nick Emenwari of the Seattle Seahawks is the first one. Mike McDonald clearly wants to give Emenwari the rookie Kyle Hamilton treatment. We're likely going to see him used in the slot in certain packages. That's where he'll play most of his snaps. We'll likely see him when the team goes to dime as well and Tyrese Knight comes off the field. I think Emenwari will likely act as his replacement at linebacker on those certain snaps. This is all well and good, like as far as alignments go. The problem is we're not expecting this to be a full-time role, which again means that in most IDP leagues, he's not going to be a starter for us just yet. We'll have to wait this one out until he becomes a full-time player, likely taking over for Kobe Bryant. But for now, we wait. Xavier Watts as well in Atlanta. I really do think he'll become the starter at some point this season. It just doesn't look like it's yet. Jordan Fuller is ahead of him on the depth chart and likely going to start week one. We'll just have to wait this one out as well. Now, it's possible, like I said, Watts is the starter sooner rather than later. Both Fuller and Watts did play in the third preseason game. Both guys played in the second preseason game as well and rotated quite a bit with other safeties, though Watts stayed in the game and played, or sorry, I should say Watson Fuller did not play in the third preseason game. But I'm looking at preseason week 2. Watts stayed in the game after Fuller had left. So he played a little bit into the second half. Fuller did not. So for now, we just kind of avoid this messy situation until we have more clarity. But if you really have to, Jordan Fuller could be an option here. Nick Martin, linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. He was a third round pick. He is behind D Winters right now. We're stashing Martin on taxi squads for Dynasty, but I'd expect Winters to be the starter for probably this entire year, barring injury or him just being a complete disaster for the 49ers. The problem, like for Martin right now, is that he just doesn't even seem close to being a starter just yet. Winters, Warner, and even Tatum Bethune got the rest treatment in preseason week 3. Martin did not. And the worst part is that Martin played in the second half only in the third preseason game. He was behind like some actual bums like Chaz Surratt and Jalen Graham and Luke Gifford. So 49ers sending us a clear message about where they're at with Martin right now. And if anything, that should help us feel much better about D Winters this season. Now I've included Abdul Carter on here, and I'm only cautioning him because, being the third overall pick in the NFL draft, like typically we'd expect immediate playing time and IDP impact, but it's a little different with Carter and the Giants' edges. So far in the preseason, we've seen him used exclusively as a designated pass rusher on the first drives of both of the first 2 preseason games where Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux were in the lineup. And we saw the exact same thing in the third preseason game for Abdul Carter when Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux were not in the lineup. And it was Chauncey Golston and Tommen Fox who got the start and played the bulk of the starting snaps. Now, I don't think this is the Giants saying Carter is behind Golston and Fox, but it is likely their plan for him to start the year as he kind of gets rotated in after Burns and Thibodeaux. Now, the second drives of like the preseason games as well with Burns and Thibodeaux out there and Carter did let Carter play a lot more ahead of those two, but then he also played well into the game after them in that second game. So all that to say, we're obviously expecting a rotation here. No surprise there. We knew this was going to be the case. So at the very least, we aren't expecting Carter to come in right away and contribute like as many snaps as Burns and Thibodeaux, but it does seem like they'll give him a chance to have his own drives as the lead edge, give those guys a little bit of rest. And I think we all kind of expect Carter to be better than Thibodeaux at this point, like, and eventually cut into his snaps even more as the season goes on. For now, though, we're not likely treating Carter as a starter for IDP outside of the deepest of leagues, but we'll keep monitoring his snaps and give the green light for when he can be unleashed as like a locked-in IDP starter for us. But obviously still love him for Dynasty. We're just tempering expectations for this season only. Some others that I wanted to highlight who I'm cautioning about. So really it's just one. It's Chop Robinson. So Chop Robinson did play in the third preseason game after giving us that injury scare. So that was good to see. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb also played. Now, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb played 100% of the first drive snaps. Chop played only the first snap. He got missed in pass protection really badly and had an unblocked snap, which you can see on the screen here. Just a missed assignment, just brutal stuff there. And yeah, like that's cool and all, but that was his only snap on the first drive. Phillips and Chubb got significantly more work with the starters. Phillips even got a sack, so it was good to see him back. Chop and Judon played the second drive together. That's Matthew Judon, who they recently just signed. And then Phillips and Chubb rotated back on as the tandem for the third drive. Then it was Chop and Judon again for one more drive while Chubb and Phillips' night was done. So for me, that first drive was really telling that as we have kind of hypothesized this offseason, a healthy Chubb and Phillips are going to get the bulk of the work, and Chop would be much more limited than last season where those guys, when those guys were out. So he's probably going to be someone that a lot of drafters are tempted to take this year as a potential breakout. And while it's not impossible, like his price right now, from what I've seen in drafts, is likely going to make him an avoid for me. Will definitely prefer Chubb and Phillips as long as they're healthy. Just likely to be a designated pass rusher role, at least for now, with Chop Robinson. I just don't think there's going to be enough playing time there to make it worth it. But adding Matthew Jude on there only adds another body to get snaps, but less concerned with him for Chop Robinson as I am with Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, who I do expect to play bigger roles. Okay, let's talk about some potential risers here as far as rookie defensive linemen go. And I'll start with James Pierce Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. The first preseason game, he played ahead of Jalen Walker. It was only one snap on the first drive for Jalen Walker, but we haven't seen Walker much. He's been banged up, and Pierce has looked good. I tweeted about his preseason snaps last week or something. Yeah, there we go. Last week after the second preseason game, 19.4% pressure rate, 21% win rate, really solid numbers for a rookie. He's an elite pass rushing prospect coming out of Tennessee on a Falcons defensive line that is in need of elite pass rushers. He'll likely start the season by getting kind of eased in with Arnold Ebiketie and Leonard Floyd, but I have no doubt he'll be playing significant snaps as their top pass rusher much sooner rather than later. So he's one to keep an eye on for me. The other one is Mike Green in Baltimore, very similar to James Pierce coming out in that he too had a really strong pass rush profile. And while the Ravens edge group is slightly better than Atlanta, it's not amazing to the point where Green can't earn a larger role. Odafe Owe and Kyle Van Noy are expected starters there, but I do expect Green to work in there even more, even over David Ojabo, which we've seen in this preseason. Now, Green did play in the third preseason game, as did Ojabo. It looked like Ojabo was ahead because he played a little more at the start of the game, but he also ended up playing well into the second half, including the fourth quarter, Ojabo did, where Green's day was done at the end of the first half. So right now, I'm treating Green as the edge 3 in Baltimore. But again, I highlighted his pass rush numbers on Twitter coming out of preseason week 2. Really strong stuff from him. 89.4 pass rush grade, excellent win rate, excellent pressure rate. And while he was limited in preseason week 3, likely because he's expected to play more in the regular season, he was also still really good in that game as well. 8 pass rush snaps, had a pressure, 76.4 pass rush grade, 28.6% win rate. I think Green can cook for IDP. He just needs the opportunity, and I think we'll start to see his role grow as the year goes on. Now, a lesser known name in terms of rookie edges, Princely Umanmielen of the Carolina Panthers. And this is really because we have the Kardashian sisters as the Panthers projected starters at edge, with DJ Wanham and Pat Jones just being so ass that I think the team will be begging an actual talented pass rusher like a third round pick, Princely Umanmielen, to emerge as a top contributor, especially considering their second round pick, Nick Scorton, also a better pass rusher than Wanham and Jones, suffered a collapsed lung and is going to miss some time. So huge bummer there. So yeah, Wanham and Jones, look, they have been useful for IDP, and only because of snap volume. That's just kind of what they are. And they could be fine as long as those snaps are there. But what I'm warning against with these guys is that they're the types to lose snaps, especially if Umanmielen and hopefully a healthy Scorton start to show they're much more capable. So it'll be a situation to monitor as well. Talking about some defensive tackles now, Mason Graham, the highest drafted defensive tackle in the 2025 NFL draft. I think the Browns are going to lean on Graham a lot as a rookie. They already showed this in the preseason that when he's out there with the starters, which we saw in preseason week 1 and week 3, he played 100% of the snaps with the starter as the top defensive tackle. It was alongside Malik Collins, and it was ahead of Shelby Harris and the rest. Now, whether Graham can thrive in that role as a rookie, we'll see. He's going to be given every chance to do so, which we love for IDP. He'll be productive from a volume alone, and it certainly helps that he has all the talent to be much more than that as well. So DT required leagues should be rostering Graham if you can. We haven't seen other highly drafted defensive tackle, Walter Nolan in Arizona this preseason. We did see Kenneth Grant in Miami, also a potential option as a rookie, but right now it looks like he could split time with Benito Jones, and then obviously Zach Sealer is there as well. So based on the preseason usage, it hasn't been anything other than what we kind of expected for like Kenneth Grant, at least. It'll be a bit of a rotation for him there. Derek Harmon in Pittsburgh is hurt. And then in Detroit, Tyleik Williams was the other first round defensive tackle. We did see him in the first preseason game, but the Lions don't play their starters in the preseason. So not expecting significant usage from him in year one to be a contributor for us. So really it's Mason Graham as the clear favorite to play as a rookie and make an impact. And maybe one more defensive tackle that I think deserves a look ahead of maybe some of the other second rounders at the position, like TJ Sanders in Buffalo and Alfred Collins in San Francisco, Shamar Turner in Chicago, Omar Norman Lott in Kansas City. I'm talking about Jamari Caldwell of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, he was a third round pick. He's not a high end pass rusher by any means, but he has looked really good as a run defender. And he's potentially going to start for the Chargers because that interior defensive line group, she ain't good. 82.4 PFF grade this entire preseason for Caldwell, 85.5 run defense grade. So on a defensive line where you have guys like Otito Ogbonnia, Tyir Tart, Deshaun Hand, Naquan Jones, I'm not putting a ton of stock into Caldwell, but those deeper DT required dynasty leagues is where he deserves a look right now because he looked good. And if it's a bigger role for him than, expected, he should be able to rack up some tackles, maybe fall into a few sacks throughout the year, but we'll see. Just wanted to highlight him since he played well. Other rookies of note, Billy Bowman Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons, defensive back there, potentially the favorite for the Falcons nickel corner role. Look, poor sweet D. Alford had it last year. He's still on the team, but there's at least a chance that he lost that role playing with the backups in preseason week 3. In the second preseason game, we saw Alford and Bowman rotate quite a bit, but Bowman did not play in the third preseason game, which was the case for all of the Falcons' expected starters. And then Alford did play in that game. So there is a hint there that maybe Bowman's ahead. So if we're looking for a potentially productive defensive back role in Atlanta, Bowman could be the guy. I just don't think I'm trusting Sweet D this year, which it's unfortunate because I'm going to miss our Always Sunny reference and having a Sweet D to talk about each week. But alas, we soldier on. Oh, Sweet D Winters. Yes, that does work. Oh my God. Okay, there we go. We're back. We are so back. That literally just hit. We were just talking about D Winters. Hey, all right. I'm happy again. Yeah, D Alford. He could go now. We got a new Sweet D there. All right, let's talk about Shamar Stewart of the Cincinnati Bengals. I apologize for that. So yeah, the Shamar Stewart saga, it was obviously dramatic as hell this offseason, but he's on the team now and he played the first 2 preseason games. In the first preseason game, he was clearly behind Joseph Osai and Myles Murphy in terms of starters playing time. Osai and Murphy played the bulk of the snaps. Stewart got a couple of snaps as a designated pass rusher, and while those guys were both on the field as well. The problem was that Stewart played for the rest of the first half once Osai and Murphy were done after the first 2 drives. In the second preseason game, Myles Murphy did not play. He got banged up in practice. So that meant for Osai and Stewart got the start, and they were like the de facto starters playing the first 2 drives together before their day was done. So it's a tricky one here with Stewart because there's absolutely playing time up for grabs with Trey Hendrickson still, holding out and going through all of that. Who knows what'll happen there? But also with Myles Murphy banged up, they might not have a real choice other than to play Stewart, even though he's the kind of edge prospect that I don't think is going to be an immediate impact player for IDP. He could at least get a big opportunity this year, which will help his case. But he probably needs both Murphy and Hendrickson out for him to do that. And for now, at least it looks like they are. So that's why he's in the kind of we'll see section here. Donovan Ezeurakwu in Dallas is also kind of worth highlighting because the Cowboys edge group without Micah Parsons is kind of a disaster, and they're going to need someone to emerge there. Maybe that second round pick, Donovan Ezeurakwu. But he played in the first preseason game when the starters did not. He played in the second preseason game behind Sam Williams, Marshawn Nealand, and Peyton Turner. So while he probably has the most potential of that group, I'd say it's probably going to take some time for him to deliver for IDP purposes. Obviously, on the off chance that Parsons comes back, then there's less of a path to snaps, but doesn't mean that he can't get there. I just wanted to highlight him as a highly drafted player, taken in round 2 to temper expectations for IDP to start this year. And then JT Tui Molau of the Indianapolis Colts is going to be another one here on the edge. If I'm going to highlight Ezraku, then I have to also include the edge taken immediately after him in the draft. JTT taken in round 2 by the Colts. He had a great first preseason game, 90.6 pass rush grade and a sack. Hello. Love that. If we saw that in the regular season, we'd have reason to be excited. But to be Mr. Cold Blanket for a minute, a lot of that happened against some really bad backups, including quarterback Devin Leary. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea who that is. The next 2 preseason games, he had a 48 pass rush grade, 59.2 pass rush grade without a single pressure. So he also played well into the second half of those games. So, like was the case coming out of the draft, we're setting expectations low for JTT. It's Latu season in Indy, and nobody is going to F with that, including the second round Buckeye. Also highlighting Lathan Ransom in Carolina, just because he's a name that I like. I think he has IDP potential to play around the line of scrimmage, but it does look like the starters in Carolina will be Nick Scott and Trayvon Merrick, while Damani Richardson and Lathan Ransom will be the backups. And then in Philadelphia, Andrew Makuba, second round safety. It looks like Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship are going to be the starters. We haven't seen those guys in the preseason. We have seen Makuba. We have seen Sidney Brown. We didn't see them. When did we see it? We didn't see either of those guys in preseason week 3, but in preseason week 2, Makuba played one more drive after Sidney Brown's day was done. It was only one snap too, so minimal stuff there, but it is worth noting at least that I think Makuba won't be a starter right away, and if he does, it'll be like situational usage, very similar to like a Jaden Hicks usage in Kansas City that we talked about earlier that we don't love. But yeah, that's it. We just got the news too that Anthony Walker Jr., Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker, has been released. So let's throw Servassier Dennis up on the LB2 risers section, because that was one of the potential blockers for Servassier Dennis, that Anthony Walker might rotate in and out depending on situation there. One guy maybe getting the rundowns, the other guy getting the pass downs, which we saw a lot in Tampa Bay last year. But I think that's a nice sign that they trust Servassier Dennis. Could be another potential riser here for IDP to play next to Levante David. All right, that is a wrap on the preseason, folks. Like I said at the top, this episode would be more of an overview of kind of the main points and information that we learned during the preseason instead of just preseason week 3, since we didn't get much this past weekend alone. So a little bit longer, but I hope you guys found that helpful. And if you did, please like and subway to the channel, por favor. I'd greatly appreciate it. But also, we're going to be doing stuff like this every week during the season to make sure that your fantasy lineups are locked and loaded for dubs all season long, and you do not want to miss out on that. We'll be doing IDP start sit again, going game by game with all the prevalent data that you need to know each week. You won't find a more detailed breakdown for IDP anywhere, so make sure you're sub to the channel. Hell, turn the notifications on as well, just to be safe, and I'll make sure you guys are in the best position possible to win your leagues this year. But that's it for me this week, or at least for today anyways. I'll be back later this week with the IDP Godfather, Mr. Gary Davenport, will be on to talk some IDP My Guys for this season. So I hope you'll tune in for that. But until then, peace out.